With us now on the phone is Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter and contributing editor to Newsmax magazine, Judy Miller. An adjunct fellow at the Manhattan Institute, Ms. Miller is also a Fox News commentator speaking on terrorism and other national security issues. And Judy, thanks so much for being here today.
Nice to be with you.
Well, I want to ask you about Egypt in a second, but first, Republican senators who met with UN Ambassador Susan Rice say they are even more concerned than before about her explanations about the September 11th attack in Benghazi. Should Susan Rice be confirmed at this point if she is nominated as Secretary of State?
Well, I think that's really up to the Senate, and the issue that they will have to decide is whether or not Susan Rice was just delivering talking points that she actually believed, or whether or not she had reason to know that what she was saying was not true. In other words, whether or not she was in a position to verify the information that she had been given. And I think that the initial reaction to the meetings do not bode well for her and a prospective nomination for Secretary of State should President Obama choose to nominate her.
You think it's very unlikely she'll ever end up being confirmed?
No, I don't think so. I think the burden will be on the Republican senators who are in the minority to block her. And it's not clear that President Obama will want this fight. But to the extent that he does want to nominate her and he does make an issue out of this, I think it'll be hard for the Republicans to stop her.
Now, will GOP senators, in your view, be able to force the administration to be more forthcoming about what happened in Benghazi?
They're going to have to force the administration to be more forthcoming. There has been just nothing but a series of obstacle courses put in the way of a variety of Republican and Democratic senators who are trying to get to the bottom of this affair of what happened there. And I think the American people at this point expect an explanation, and they expect to be told precisely why the security situation on the ground was what it was, precisely why the administration said what it said about that episode, and the extent to which the administration is prepared to take steps to ensure that it does not happen again. It's not often that 4 American diplomats and security people are killed in the line of duty, and we can't just brush it aside and pretend it didn't happen. And I think that people who say that this is entirely political and politically motivated are way off base.
All right, let's turn to the Middle East. Egypt's President Morsi is now facing the same kind of demonstrations that brought him to power. He shows no sign of backing down. Have Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood hijacked the Arab Spring and hopes for democracy there to impose autocracy?
I think that President Morsi's election is the result of the Arab Spring. Everyone knew from the beginning that the organized parties were likely to do better, and the supremely organized party was the Muslim Brotherhood. That being said, President Morsi did not win an overwhelming mandate. He barely squeaked through as president. It took 2 rounds to elect him, and now he's claiming pharaonic-like powers that make the powers of President Mubarak pale by comparison. I'm greatly encouraged by the Egyptian people who have turned out in great numbers and with great ferocity to challenge what President Morsi has done, his blatant power grab. That being said, it's given Egypt's history, it's going to be very hard to undo.
Now, the Obama administration has been pretty soft in its response to Morsi's power grab and hasn't come out in support of the civil society there. What is your assessment of the administration's response, and is the administration then giving Egypt the green light toward autocracy?
I don't think they are. They have been critical. President Obama, his Secretary of State, all official statements have reflected displeasure with what President Morsi has done. That being said, you are correct. This has not been a very forceful response, and I think it needs to be more forceful. However, in the administration's defense, I will say this. The most important goal for the administration is to keep Egypt on track and committed to the peace process and the peace treaty that it signed with Israel ever so long ago. And to the extent that President Morsi is willing to maintain his adherence to that treaty. That's the administration's primary goal. This administration, previous administrations lived with Hosni Mubarak's dictatorship for a long time because of the Israeli-Egyptian peace agreement, and I think this administration is not going to be any different from those that has preceded it when it comes to its strategic priorities.
Now, right now there is a fragile truce between Israel and Hamas. What is the fallout of Morsi's power grab and the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood for Israel? What does this all mean for Israel?
I don't think it has any direct implication for Israel. I don't think that the Israelis have any illusions about the man with whom they're dealing as president of Egypt, nor do I think they have any illusions, unlike many Americans, about the nature of the Muslim Brotherhood. This is a very difficult organization that until very recently was committed to Israel's destruction and to a one-state solution in the Middle East. Israel is going to be as pragmatic as the Muslim Brotherhood enables it to be. What Israel wants out of the Brotherhood is a continuation of the peace treaty and its relationship with Egypt. Israel is very aware that it will not have the close working relationship on terrorism, on drugs, on smuggling that it had with Hosni Mubarak's regime. That being said, they're prepared to find a modus vivendi, if they can, so that the area can calm down. I think one thing of great concern to Israel that has been a concern from the beginning is the smuggling of weapons from Libya, from Sudan, from Iran, through the Sinai tunnels into Gaza. And that's what really precipitated the most recent round of violence. That must stop. Israel has made it very clear. Whether or not President Morsi chooses to hear that message is as yet uncertain.
Last question, Judy. Does the 8-day war in Gaza make conflict between Israel and Iran more or less likely later this year, or perhaps early next year?
I think it's initially hard to say how the Iranians will interpret what they saw happen in Gaza. There are both things that are encouraging and discouraging to them. For one thing, the Iranians saw that the Iron Dome anti-missile shield worked extremely effectively, and that must give them great pause in the event of an armed conflict between Iran and Israel. If Israel is actually able to protect its population and its population centers, its settlements, its cities, that would make a military strike against Iranian nuclear facilities more likely, and the Iranians have to be very concerned about that. On the other hand, they also saw that when push came to shove, the Israelis were not willing to commit ground troops to Gaza. They were not willing to incur the casualties that would be necessary to uproot some of the Hamas and Iranian-supplied infrastructure in the Gaza Strip. So given how little we know at this point about how the mullahs make decisions in Tehran, it's very hard to understand initially the lessons that they will draw from the 8 days of violence between Israel and Gaza. I think what you have to avoid is believing everything that the Iranians say right now. They're making a lot of different statements. Some of them are very provocative, but I think a lot of that is just kind of rhetoric. I think that when the Iranians look at what happened, and when they look at the effectiveness of the Iron Dome system and other anti-missile systems that the Israelis are beginning to put in place, that has to be a little disconcerting for them.
All right, Judy Miller, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.